All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the State of Downtown for the second quarter of 2025. Today, we'll be focusing on downtown's retail market. My name is Aaron Sukanik. I'm the Vice President of District Development here at the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, joined today by PDP colleagues Kate Irvin and Jeremy Waldrop. We also have a special guest, Catherine Timko of the Riddle Company. As we go through the presentation, please hold your questions until the end. We'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. If you can put questions in the chat, that would be much appreciated, and that'll also ensure that they're first in line at the end. All right.
One quick thing just before you kick us off, Aaron. We are recording this, and this will be posted to our YouTube channel.
Yep. All right. In late January, at our Q1 State of Downtown, we went through the math on our current residential, office, and retail, so live, work, play, square footage downtown, and how the market indicators really inform what an optimal mix for a downtown real estate portfolio would look like. Specific to retail, the highlights of our analysis were that spaces over 10,000 square feet have a much higher vacancy rate than spaces under square feet at 10,000. 7.9 million square feet of downtown vacant office space can be converted to residential, which would bring our population from 7,000 to between 10 and 20,000, which is what many national retailers need when making site location decision. For the larger vacant spaces, having a downtown population of almost 20,000 within a 15-minute walk time anywhere is a game changer for recruiting national retailers for those large square foot spaces. Even though a much higher residential population would be critical for national retail recruitment efforts, you'll see today that residential occupancy rates, return to office gains, and overall daytime population trends have really been the main driver of the decrease in closures and increase in openings that we've seen since 2020. Okay, in our PDP strategic plan, released around the same time as the Q1 State of Downtown, our commitment to working on growing that residential population and growing the retail offerings downtown was formalized. So today we'll dive deeper into what that means and next steps. What is the current state of downtown's retail economy and available retail space? And what more we will do and can do collaboratively to grow our retail economy here in Pittsburgh. Today, you'll see net gains of new retail in the past couple of years. And if that current trend continues, we can project out to when our number of operating retail businesses will be fully recovered to 2019 levels. But this is only possible with our continued collaboration to drive interest in downtown Pittsburgh and to highlight how downtown Pittsburgh is a market unlike any other in our region, with 90,000 potential customers daily on average. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our Senior Director of Economic Development, Kate Irvin, who not only oversees our downtown activity dashboard and all things data, but also leads our retail development programs.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Before we get into the data and trend analysis, I'll start with a recap of our retail development programs over the last 2 years. We'll later reference the specific impact of these programs within the presentation. So in 2023, we launched Project Pop-Up as a fast-moving strategy to bring life back to downtown's vacant storefronts. The idea is simple: provide a low-risk opportunity for a small business to test a physical location in downtown. Vacant ground floor spaces become activated, visible, and an amenity for upper floor tenants. And then sometimes pop-ups become long-term tenants. Right now, we have 4 pop-ups operating, including a charcuterie and coffee shop, a yoga shop, and a home decor boutique. These are high-quality, locally owned businesses that not only fill space, but also draw people downtown. And one of those pop-ups is also now a long-term leaseholder. Building on the success of Project Pop-Up, we launched the Downtown Rent Abatement Program in 2024 to support businesses making multi-year leasing commitments. This program helps bridge the gap by subsidizing a portion of rent during the first year, a crucial support mechanism for small and emerging businesses navigating high startup costs. This support can mean the difference between opening or walking away, especially for small independent businesses. Since launching the program, we've helped bring in a range of new tenants to downtown, with more on the way. So far, 6 abatements have been approved, with 4 currently open and 2 more coming later this spring and summer. So together, these two programs form a complementary strategy: Pop-Up for rapid low barrier activation and the Downtown Abatement Program for a deeper investment with long-term growth. With additional businesses in the pipeline, we're continuing to work closely with property owners and brokers to identify viable tenants and fill strategic gaps in downtown. In addition to Project Pop-Up and the Downtown Rent Abatement Program, we've also been supporting our Placemaking Pop-Ups initiative. Through this work, we've been partnering with artists and cultural organizations to turn vacant storefronts into immersive, visually compelling experiences. These art-based interventions help reshape the way people see and move through downtown, inviting curiosity, conversation, and connection. Some recent highlights include La Vespera's Plastic Sphere, a sinking reality, an evocative window installation confronting plastic pollution, the whimsical and hyper-local You Are Here pop-up museum, created by Boaz Frankel and Brooke Barker, and Shaping the Future, a national showcase of emerging sculptors, presented in partnership with the International Sculpture Center. Each of these projects brought new life into underutilized spaces while supporting the creative economy. And just as importantly, they help shift the narrative from vacancy to possibility. These interventions drive interest and engagement, laying the groundwork for the next step, welcoming in new businesses and supporting more permanent reactivation. Additionally, in 2025, we're collaborating with the Downtown Neighbors Alliance on small business marketing and promotion, along with continued targeted retail recruitment. These programs have a measurable impact, which I'll get into more detail later on. But I wanted to start with these so we have solutions and resources in mind while we're looking at the larger data analysis. As a first step, it's important to look at what's actually on the market. So this chart breaks down downtown's vacant retail spaces by size, and it gives us insight into both the opportunities we're well positioned to address and the challenges that will require some new solutions. Many of the retail spaces downtown are relatively small, specifically under 5,000 square feet. That's a good match for current market demand, which favors flexible, affordable footprints, ideal for local businesses, services, and emerging brands. But that surface level view masks a deeper challenge. Just 13 large format spaces, those over 10,000 square feet each, account for nearly 3/4 of all vacant retail square footage. So while our programs like the Downtown Rent Abatement and Project Pop-Up are well positioned to support small footprint tenants, we also need to think creatively about these larger spaces, whether that means demising them into smaller units, activating them with temporary uses, or targeting national and entertainment-oriented tenants that can make full use of the available square footage. So, small format retail spaces are currently driving much of the recovery, and the types of businesses opening in downtown Pittsburgh today reflect a notable shift in market dynamics. Recent openings have been concentrated in food and beverage, some specialty retail, and personal services, categories that typically seek smaller, more flexible footprints and align with current consumer preferences. In fact, 81% of new business openings since 2019 have occurred in spaces under 5,000 square feet, underscoring the demand for right-sized storefronts that meet today's market needs. At the same time, large format spaces remain the most difficult to fill. These spaces often exceed the size and overhead that today's tenants can absorb, especially for independent operators. While there is not a shortage of small spaces, there is a shortage of small spaces that are turnkey and readily occupied with minimal build-out investment. While adapting larger spaces to meet small footprint demand could be an important strategy if they're ready to be occupied, we recognize that the current challenge is in the costs required to do that and the ability to finance those costs, whether from the owner or tenant. Moving forward, strategies like demising incentives, flexible lease terms, and rethinking the configuration of retail will be critical in ensuring our available space meets the needs of tenants and supports a vibrant street-level experience. So this chart represents the net business change in downtown Pittsburgh from 2019 to 2024. So this is the difference between total openings and total closures each year. So rather than just showing how many businesses open, this gives us a clearer overall picture of the business environment and whether we're gaining or losing businesses year over year. While the pandemic accelerated downtown business closures, it's important to note that business losses had already begun prior to 2020. Still, 2020 marked the most significant disruption, with closures surging and widespread uncertainty. Between 2019 and 2022, our downtown core experienced significant business losses with a net loss of 75 businesses across sectors like retail, food and beverage, and services. Much of that loss was concentrated in 2020 when the pandemic triggered a sharp and immediate wave of closures. Since then, we've seen a measured but steady recovery. In 2023 and 2024, we regained 16 net new businesses, signaling that momentum was building again. If this pace continues, averaging about 8 net new gains per year, we're on track to return to pre-pandemic business levels in 5 to 7 years. So building on the downtown business churn, this chart brings together two sets of information to show how business dynamics in downtown Pittsburgh have changed over the past 6 years and how they correlate with broader patterns of activity. Let's briefly walk through how to read this because there's a lot on this chart. So the bars represent the number of business closures in blue and openings in purple each year. This is plotted on the left vertical axis, which shows the number of businesses. The two lines show activity and occupancy trends plotted on the right vertical axis. The green line represents residential occupancy. This is the percentage of available housing units occupied. The red line shows overall daily activity recovery, which includes foot traffic from residents, employees, and visitors, as reported by Placer AI. This line reflects how current activity compares to 2019 levels, with 100% representing full recovery. Together, these trends help us understand the relationship between downtown activity patterns and business dynamics over time. In 2020, we see that downtown experienced not only a wave of business closures, but also a sharp decline in daily activity and a dip in residential occupancy. Since 2022, we've seen closures stabilize and new business openings gain momentum, a trend that closely aligns with rising levels of downtown activity, including increased residential occupancy, visitor foot traffic, return to office, and overall daily activity. By 2022, residential occupancy crossed the 90% threshold and business closures began to level off. By 2024, occupancy had climbed over 91%, returning to pre-pandemic levels and helping sustain food, beverage, service, and neighborhood-oriented retail. Meanwhile, overall daily downtown activity has steadily grown, fueled by a mix of residents, employees, hybrid workers, and visitors. As of 2024, daily activity had surpassed 70% of pre-2020 levels, with visitor recovering approaching 85%. And downtown employees, defined as workers on site 4 or more days per week, remains around 60%. It is worth noting that hybrid workers are likely being categorized as visitors by Placer, since their in-office frequency falls below the 4-day threshold. These recovery patterns reinforce a key insight. Downtown's business recovery is not dependent on a single user group. Instead, it's being driven not just by downtown employees, as it extensively relied on pre-2020, but visitors, residents, hybrid workers, and employees. So, retail follows foot traffic from residents to workers to employees. Over the past 3 years, we've seen a clear pattern emerge. New business openings, especially these net gains, are closely aligned with the return of people to downtown. This activity comes not just from office workers, but from a broader mix. Residents, visitors, students, event goers, and casual users are all contributing to the renewed energy of the downtown district. As residential occupancy climbed, tourism rebounded, and daily activity stabilized, business closures declined, and net gains began to appear for the first time since before 2019. These trends suggest that a diverse daytime and nighttime population is essential to retail growth. The takeaway here is that retail recovery isn't just about one audience. It's about creating a downtown that functions for many. That means supporting holistic economic growth that combines residential growth, small business development, and destination-driven experiences that bring people in consistently throughout the week. So we've looked at our overall business churn, but to understand how different types of businesses experienced the downturn and how they're recovering, we need to zoom in by category. So each color-coded bar here shows how businesses closed in each sector, ranging from traditional retail and food and beverage to services, coffee shop, and entertainment from 2019 through 2024. This helps us spot not just the scale of loss, but where vulnerability and resilience varied most. While we've already seen how overall business closures peaked in 2020 and have since stabilized, this breakdown by business types also helps us better understand which sectors were hit hardest and how recovery is varying across categories. Food and beverage businesses were the most impacted, with more than 30 closures in 2020 alone, reflecting the acute challenges these businesses faced during shutdowns and limited indoor service. Traditional retail also saw steep losses. And what's important to note is that this trend started before the pandemic. 2019 was already the second highest year for closures, suggesting growing pre-existing pressures on the retail environment. Since then, we've seen significant year-over-year improvement, especially after 2021. And by 2023 and 2024, closures had leveled off across most categories, but not all sectors recovered at the same pace. To understand the pace of recovery by sector, it's necessary to also understand where new business growth is happening. So this chart shows our annual business openings broken out by sector from 2019 through 2024. This view helps us see which sectors are rebounding, which are emerging, and where there may still be gaps or opportunities for support. While closures have declined in recent years, the real momentum is in what's opening and which sectors are driving that recovery. Food and beverage businesses tell the clearest story. They were the most heavily impacted by pandemic closures, with that more than 30 losses in 2020 alone, but they've proven to be the most resilient. Since 2021, this category has consistently outpaced all others with new openings, peaking in 2022 and remaining strong through 2024. This signals downtown's continued appeal as a destination for dining and hospitality, and it reinforces the value of street-level vibrancy. Traditional retail, on the other hand, has had a more uneven path. It saw steady closures in the early pandemic years, particularly among legacy convenience stores, pharmacies, gift shops, and clothing boutiques. But we're now seeing signs of a slow rebound. The new wave of retail openings includes a mix of value-driven national brands like Target and Five Below, and local lifestyle-oriented independents like AZ Home Details and Love. This reflects a shift towards affordability, uniqueness, and home-centered purchases. Coffee shops have also shown a steady growth across this period, with 2024 marking their strongest year to date. Services such as fitness studios and salons remain underrepresented compared to pre-pandemic levels, suggesting a slower rebound for this type of business. And many of the closures, such as tailors and shoe repair shops, were long-standing service providers that relied heavily on office workers and daily downtown activity. This pattern reflects how service businesses, especially those with high overhead or required in-person delivery models, may need more time, more support, or more adaptation to return at scale. Overall, this chart gives us a clear sense of where downtown demand is heading and how downtown businesses are responding to the way that people are using downtown differently than before. So this chart now zooms in on the two most recent years, 2024 and the first quarter of 2025, and shows two things side by side. First, the total number of new business openings in blue, and then how many of those openings were supported by a PDP incentive program like Project Pop-Up and the Downtown Rent Abatement Program in purple. This gives us a snapshot not only of how much growth is happening, but also how much of that growth is being directly supported through our programs. As we look at the most recent and current year, it's clear that business growth is continuing and that PDP's incentive programs are playing a meaningful role in that momentum. In 2024, downtown saw 17 new business openings, and nearly half, 8 of those, were supported through PDP programs, including the Downtown Rent Abatement Program and Project Pop-Up. That's a strong signal that our tools are working, they're lowering barriers and accelerating lease-up in a recovering market. So far in 2025, we've tracked 4 new openings, including one tied to a PDP incentive, with more in the pipeline for later this year. So this chart underscores an important point. Direct support does matter. These programs are not only helping individual businesses succeed, they're shaping the larger trajectory of downtown's recovery and long-term tenant mix. As we continue to grow these efforts, the goal is to amplify our reach, supporting more spaces, reducing friction for emerging tenants, and helping landlords activate vacant properties. So downtown is recovering and supportive measures are working. Since the sharp spike in closures in 2020, downtown Pittsburgh has entered a new phase of recovery marked by year-over-year declines in closures and consistent business openings. Much of that growth has been by food and beverage businesses, including coffee shops, which have proven more resilient and better aligned with how people are now engaging with downtown, the social and experiential district. But recovery hasn't been evenly distributed. Traditional retail and personal services remain below pre-pandemic levels, signaling the need for more tailored support and creative reactivation tools. It's where incentive-based strategies have played a critical role, and in 2024, nearly half of all new downtown business openings received support through PDP programs. These tools help fill long vacant spaces, lower barriers to entry, and attract businesses that generate energy and foot traffic at the street level. And this approach isn't unique to Pittsburgh. Incentive programs like this have become the cornerstone of post-pandemic retail recovery strategies in cities across the country, including New York, Philadelphia, Denver, and Seattle. Early 2025 numbers suggest that these programs are continuing to deliver results, with additional openings in progress and more activations in the pipeline. The message is clear. Targeted, well-designed investment in ground floor retail isn't just helpful, it's essential. To ensure we're focusing our efforts where they can have the greatest impact, we brought in outside expertise. In summer 2024, PDP engaged a consultant with national experience in downtown retail strategy to help us assess the landscape and recommend the next steps. Their work is helping us sharpen our approach and stay ahead of the curve. We're excited to share the results of our downtown retail strategy work, led by Catherine Timko of the Riddle Company. Catherine brings a unique blend of national expertise and local insight. She's worked with cities across the country to reshape retail environments, support small business growth, and drive public-private collaboration. Through a competitive RFP process, the Riddle Company was selected not only for its deep experience with downtown and business district organizations, including Downtown DC Bid, Invest Atlanta, and Center City District in Philadelphia, but for its proven ability to partner with local stakeholders, attract national brands, and enhance marketing positioning. Catherine is a nationally recognized urban strategist with more than 25 years of experience in economic and real estate development. With a background in urban studies, she has led over 200 projects in communities of all sizes. Her work has directly influenced market perception, investment attraction, and the development of financing and market tools that are now considered industry best practices. Today, she'll walk us through the core analysis and findings of the strategy and the next steps we'll take together to strengthen downtown's retail future.
Thank you. I'm going to use you as my PR consultant from here on in. So I'm really excited to be here. I have to say, getting to know Pittsburgh, particularly downtown Pittsburgh, has been really a wonderful experience. And it taught me that there's a lot of things I thought the city had or about the city that frankly weren't true. So as Kate said, we led a retail strategy, and I had a partner, eConsult Solutions in Philadelphia, that did work with me. And we took the approach that using data was the best way to build this strategy. And part of that is because we know retailers and retail investors need data to really make informed site selection decisions. And that takes a lot of data. It's looking at market demographics. It's looking at, what's going on the ground in the local market, looking at lease rates, et cetera. So we decided to take the approach of looking at Pittsburgh from a retailer's eyes. And we built a data set that is not only something that a retailer can use, but that investors can use. And what we discovered, there's a lot of unmet buying power that's in the city itself, as well as in downtown. And in 2024, my memory is it's about $110 million of unmet retail demand. And moving into 2029, that actually goes up to about $150 million. And that does not include things like autos, appliances, healthcare. It's really focused on traditional retail. So what we did, and if we go to the next slide, we kind of took the approach that a tenant needs and a potential investor needs to have data. So part of this process is building a set of retail trade areas that a retailer would use, a lender might use to look at a market. And the initial one we built was a 15-minute walk time from Market Square. And we did that, and it was interesting because we discovered, I have a hard time sitting and talking, so I may wiggle. It's basically the same boundaries as the Golden Triangle. But because you have such a unique environment with water on both sides and you have a set of bridges, we also looked at drive times and we looked at an extended walk time. We also looked at the greater downtown area. And we learned in this process that, people move along these neighborhoods. You move from downtown to the Strip District and back and forth. So these trade areas are useful because we can then explain to a tenant what is here, who's here, what's the buying power. We also ran a 1 mile trade area, which is a ring essentially, because there are some tenants that really look at that. And if you take this snapshot, what this is basically the initial market information that a tenant may need to consider a market. I always refer to it as if you're dating, this is the thing that'll get you to the next date. And we're having discussions with tenants. When I can show them this, and Kate and Aaron and Jeremy can show a tenant this kind of information, it gives them an understanding of what the base market looks like. And then it gives them the incentive to continue to kind of move into doing research and due diligence on a market. And one of the things I have to say, you guys are doing everything right. You have a lot of data, you've got great placemaking, you've got new tenants that are coming in, you've got residential base that's growing. The one thing this group has not really done, it's really doing proactive retail attraction, and a lot of other cities are doing that. So that's partly where I come in, and that's partly where our data comes in, and how we built this whole program. And one of the things about the trade areas, it also allows us to compare geographies. So let's say a grocer is looking at the market. They can make a determination of where they want to be based on some of this data. Interesting though, downtowns are really unique because it's not really just a primary trade area, which I know there's probably a couple brokers and real estate investors on the phone. That is what you think about as your neighborhood serving retail. It's your pharmacy, it's the coffee shops, it is some of the services Kate talked about, the shoe repairman, and it's grocery. But the key thing about a downtown and what makes it unique, it's the center point often of a larger trade area and a secondary and a tertiary trade area that might be able to bring in and needs a larger base to attract like an entertainment user. They need to have more than the 10 to 20,000. They're looking at 30 and 40,000. Certain brands, retail brands that would play off of a Target and Burlington also need a larger trade area. So that's nice. Downtown is kind of nestled right in this. But part of what we looked at as well is we looked at competition in the market, not only in downtown, but around downtown, including in the Strip District, what's going on the North Shore, South Shore. We also looked at vacancies and lease rates. And the vacancies are not necessarily bad. You saw the chart that Kate had put up. A lot of cities don't have the space to accommodate the kind of tenants they need. A grocer, a Nordstrom Rack, a TJX, they need over 10,000 square feet. You have those spaces, so that puts you at an advantage. And so I want you to, when we walk away from this, is one of the key messages is that vacancy is not necessarily bad. It actually gives you an opportunity to bring in the kind of tenant you want. And the nice thing about tenants like that, they become anchors to attract other users. One of the things we also tracked was what was going on in the development pipeline. And if we go to the next slide, we drilled down a little bit. I have found in doing this, and I did a lot of work in Philadelphia for over 10 years, is we found when we were trying to court national tenants, and it was right after 2009 when the market crashed. They lost a lot of their tenants on their High Street and Walnut Street. We needed to compare Philadelphia to other markets. So we started looking at, for Pittsburgh, we looked at other markets that you're similar to. We started benchmarking you against some of the things that other tenants may be looking at. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to give you an example. Kate and I recently had a phone call with a tenant that we're prospecting to, that we want to have a meeting with at a retail trade show we're going to, and I'll get into that in a little bit. We got the guy on the phone, and he basically said, his team had been looking at Pittsburgh, and they previously looked at it, and they just said, they passed. And we asked him why. Interestingly enough, he said the bridges. Kate was able to walk him through, the bridge structure in Pittsburgh and how people move back and forth across the North Shore, South Shore, how people also move across the neighborhoods between the Strip District and downtown, residents, workers, visitors. We kind of walked through that. Then we started talking to him about some of the other market nuances, if you will. Visitor traffic, which he didn't have, the kind of, visitors you're getting with the cultural district. We talked to him about some of the students that are in the market. He had no idea there was that many that were living in downtown. The thing I like about students is nobody knows that they're there. They're not counted in census data, and they generally have tremendous buying power. A little different than when I went to school. Kids have their parents' credit cards, and the retailers know that. By the time we got done that part of the conversation, then I was able to compare other markets that they have stores in. And one of the key ones is Philadelphia. And if any of you know it, there's the Walnut Street and the South Street Bridge that connects Center City with University City. Kids are walking back and forth, students, professors, residents back and forth all day long. Once we started to explain that's what Pittsburgh is like, he said he needed to take a second look. So he's agreed to come back to the market sometime this summer, and Kate's going to give him a tour, show them the realities of what's going on. So to me, the big takeaway here is that data really can help you change and how you tell your story about Pittsburgh. And then as we go through ongoing implementation, one of the things we're doing is trying to sell Pittsburgh at a 30,000-foot level. And a key step in this is getting Pittsburgh involved in what's called the International Council of Shopping Centers. It is essentially the largest retail trade association for retailers, retail developers, anybody in the retail real estate industry. That includes architects, brokers, financiers, even suppliers. So we're going to for the first time, we're bringing Pittsburgh, I should say, to the National Convention, and it is in Las Vegas in May. It's the largest collection and convening of real estate developers and retailers at any given time. Essentially, it's kind of the Super Bowl, if you will, of retail real estate. And if Herky and John Jackson are on the call, they know that there are times when the show brings in about 50,000 people. The last couple of years, it's been anywhere between 35 and 45,000. These are retailers, these are brokers, these are national tenants. So our focus is on those tenants that are going to fill those 5,000 and 10,000 square foot spaces. And we're looking at things like entertainment users, certain types of retail brands that would play off and be great adjacency to Target and to Burlington. And I have to say, we've gotten great reception so far. We've got several grocers we're meeting with, and I'm not going to tell them who. We've also got several retail tenants that we're talking to and entertainment users. So it's really exciting to me that in the first time out, we're getting some really great meetings. And a lot of it is because of the data that we've been able to collect, but also building off the data that downtown Pittsburgh has. So with that, that's where we are.
Thanks, Catherine. I know that I'm Jeremy Waldrop with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. I know that we just threw a lot of information at you. So please sharpen your pencils and put some questions in the chat. We do have some good things going in there already, and we'll get to those in just a minute. I want to just quickly talk with you a little bit about next steps. First, thanks to Kate and to Aaron for their leadership in this work. Their ability to kind of craft programs that are kind of meeting the downtown market at the moment is extremely appreciated. We're looking forward to continue to partner with property owners and businesses, entrepreneurs who are interested in downtown, the Downtown Neighbors Association, growing that partnership with them, or I'm sorry, Alliance, growing that partnership with them. And we want your help in doing so. We want to hear from you guys about what's working, what isn't working in downtown Pittsburgh. First, I want to reiterate on the next slide, the downtown rent abatement program. As Kate mentioned, this is a program that we are actively promoting. We have a track record of successfully delivering. So if you're a property owner with vacant retail space, we want to hear from you. If you're interested in attracting a long-term tenant, we want to provide that support for that first year. As was discussed, there's a number of new businesses that are taking advantage of this program. It's something that we want to continue to grow. So please contact us. We'll put Kate's contact information at the end. And I know most of you on the call know how to get in touch with myself or with Aaron. In addition to the downtown rent abatement program, we have our storefront activation and facade improvement programs. These things can be packaged together and create some significant subsidy for retailers, for you as property owners, those of you who own property here in downtown Pittsburgh. So please let us know kind of what you're thinking. We also have the MPP program. And yesterday I had the pleasure of walking around the cultural district with Governor Shapiro. We met with one of our downtown rent abatement program participants, Defer Coffee, over at 8th and Penn Avenue. This is one of the businesses that took advantage, and the way that they're doing, the way that we're supporting this work is through, in part, the partnership that we have with Department of Community and Economic Development through their tax credit program. We are actively looking for businesses in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that have some tax liability with the Commonwealth and would be interested in investing in our neighborhood partnership program, which is a 6-year commitment. And we're also looking at a potential 1-year commitment through the SPP program. So if you are a business here in the Commonwealth and would like to think about ways that you can invest your dollars for a tax credit here in downtown Pittsburgh, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Aaron. We'd love to talk with you about that. But as we mentioned, in the fall of last year, as the governor mentioned in the fall of last year, the state is committing about $62 million in downtown Pittsburgh directly. You're seeing the fruits of that investment begin with the Arts Landing over in the Cultural District, the new public space that the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust is managing. You've also seen some construction fencing go up in Market Square over the last couple of weeks. Dust will be flying in the next week or so in Market Square as we work hard over the next year to invest in these public spaces. They're going to be critical to the future of downtown Pittsburgh, our ability to continue to attract commercial office tenants and new residents into the core will be led through these public space investments. This is also unleashing about 1,000 new units that are going to be coming online here in downtown Pittsburgh. Most of them are, all of them through residential conversion programs. Again, increasing the attractiveness of downtown Pittsburgh to potential new retailers. Last, and as Catherine mentioned, we will be at the International Council of Shopping Centers. That conference is just a little under a month away in Las Vegas. If you are going to be there as a broker, as a property owner, as a developer, we want to know that, and we want to help you in any way that we possibly can. Is there information that we can give you with respect to the downtown market? Is there any sort of analysis that we can help make your pitch for a specific property or specific type of business that you're going after? If we can make that more compelling, let us know. We have some really excellent data, as you've seen today, and we're happy to do more digging. And we're really pleased with the support that we've received from Catherine Temko. Her leadership and her expertise in this space has been a phenomenal asset to us to help us learn and grow our work in retail attraction and investment, helping to steer discussions about potential new investments that can be made in programs that support retailer. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, we are very interested in doing as much as we can, as fast as we can. About a year from now, we'll be welcoming the NFL draft to Pittsburgh, and we really want to use this as an opportunity to make downtown the most vibrant and welcoming place that it can be. And that retail and storefront and ground floor experience is super important to that. So you're going to be seeing new investments from us as an organization in public art, in lighting, in storefront activations, both through art, through pop-ups, and through this rent abatement program. But we welcome your ideas. We want to hear from you. If you've seen something in other cities that you think would work well here in downtown Pittsburgh, we know that not every storefront needs to be retail. If there are other users that you could think about that could be interesting to help us activate these spaces, we certainly want to hear from you on that. We have about a year, but as you know, time certainly goes by quickly, and we're working in earnest to raise some funds to support this work and ensure that we use this NFL draft as a special moment to kick off a whole series of activations and programs and new investments in our street life here in downtown Pittsburgh that will be felt for months and years longer than just that NFL draft experience. If you have questions, concerns, you want to dig into this data more directly, please feel free to reach out to Kate. Her email address is on the screen, and we'll throw that in the chat so you can easily copy and paste it. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to take a look at the screen, and I think Aaron is managing the chat, and we'll see what you guys have to say.
All right. So yeah, looking at the chat, we'll go down in order and combine questions as it makes sense. One question here from Camille is about if we know what contributed to the closures in 2019. Jeremy, did you have
Yeah.
any?
I think it was a variety of things. I think we saw a few restaurants close, some of them longtime staples in downtown Pittsburgh. We also began to see, I think, a shift in just the types of retail that was opening in downtown, but I don't know if there's one thing that could really contribute to the closure. We did start to see a softening of the commercial office market. I think that's been well discussed, even pre-pandemic, and that was certainly accelerated post-pandemic. But I think all those things contributed. And it was interesting, while we saw growth in certain areas, we still saw really strong Penn Avenue, Market Square, and even more interest in First Avenue. We did see some pockets, particularly Smithfield Street, with kind of continued large-scale vacancies in that corridor, along Mellon Square Garage Retail, that emptying out, changes over between Liberty Avenue and Sixth Avenue. I think that's probably where we saw some of the biggest challenges there. And then also some of our interior retail. So those indoor mall experiences that you see in some of the larger office towers, I think began to see some churn in that space.
And can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
Thinking about how a lot, and hi, right? Hey, thinking about how a lot of folks are reaching retirement age. We have a huge transition in like our demographic. Do you all see any possible way to create almost an inventory of a lot of these businesses that are closing, but could possibly sell and maybe be acquired by other people to keep the businesses going? Like a prime example would be Boulevard Deli on Smithfield. They closed because they were retiring and literally had nobody else to take over the business. Might there be any areas for us to keep some of those long-term downtown staples there who might just be retiring and have nobody to take over and be acquired by other folks?
Yeah, that's I think a really good point, and something that I know we've talked a bit about internally when we catch wind of a business that might not have some sort of retirement plan, succession planning going on, really speaking to them, because I think that's a key part of what made downtown Pittsburgh, or what has made downtown Pittsburgh special, is that we had a lot of these small mom and pop owners. A lot of them, their kids had zero interest in kind of the grind of retail, of restaurant business. So yeah, I think that's certainly something, and we would welcome folks, as you hear about those things. A lot of it's kind of relationship driven. Folks don't really want to talk about their plans, particularly if they're thinking of closing or selling. If you hear about those things, like, certainly let us know, so that we can reach out and do some direct engagement with those folks. With Camille, I think that's a great idea. Kate, Aaron, anything to add on that front? All right.
All right, next question from Emily here about whether we've looked at Detroit and what they've done, and with specifically Bedrock, to attract major national brands. So Emily, the short answer is yes, we have. We have met with and are in touch with folks from Bedrock, and we actually hope to have them at a future one of these sessions. But just a couple of things that we took away from our meeting with them was that as owners, they invest a considerable amount in white boxing their spaces so that they are more readily turnkey for a potential occupant. So that has been a big help for getting tenants interest generated quickly and tenants in there faster. The other piece of valuable feedback that we got from them as owners was that they really do view those anchor retailers and storefront experiences as drivers for residential and office above it. So they really view it through a tenant amenity lens as much as a rent-paying tenant lens.
Makes sense.
So
Thanks. Yeah, I've also heard in my conversations with them that they, offer huge tenant improvement allowances to attract those brands, like $100 a foot. And it also probably helps that they've probably acquired a lot of that property in the, at the lowest point of Detroit's downtown. So having sort of like a vertically integrated player there that can do everything at once, I think is also why they've been so successful. So I don't know. It would just be great to get like the Fenway Group or someone to buy, several blocks and be able to replicate that.
Yeah, the other thing that Bedrock had the ability to do was very flexible leasing structures where they had a base rent that may have been lower than traditional market rate while they were trying to build that amenity base that, as Aaron referenced, and then doing it on a percentage base on top of the base rent. So it made it a little bit easier for a new tenant to come in the first couple of years. Yeah, Bedrock's a great example.
I'm glad we're talking to them. So thanks. Keep it up.
thank you. Catherine, don't unmute yourself yet, or don't mute yourself yet here. We have a question about how you obtain the data for age range and degree level and household income.
We use a combination of tools, one of which is Esri, which actually incorporates census data. We looked at straight census data, then we also incorporated BLS data. So it's a combination of all of those. And then part of the other data sets we actually drilled down right into Pittsburgh. We went on to the university sites so we could see how many students are at each university. We looked at employment locally, and we looked at city and state data as well.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Another question from Megan about whether we've polled or surveyed residents downtown about retail that that may be of interest. We do, relative to our work specifically, we do have a annual survey. But Jeremy, do you happen to know if that's ever been specific to retail?
Well, actually,
Oh, no,
yes, the residential survey that we do a large scale residential survey every 2 years, which specifically asks for the type of retail and specifically if there are specific retailers that people would like to see in downtown. And so we have been tracking that for quite a few years. And that also does help inform, particularly some of the next steps that we're doing with the large kind of national tenant recruitment, because a lot of it, kind of things like a grocery store, those are the things that have consistently come out just sort of year over year. But also, as kind of Aaron had mentioned earlier, the need for increased density of residential population to sort of sustain some of those larger retailers. But then some of these kind of the smaller retail that people are also looking for, kind of boutiques and that sort of independent retail, that's where these kind of targeted programs also grew out from.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but where did those surveys come from? I've lived downtown since 2016 and I've never been surveyed.
We send a direct mailer to every single downtown residential address in both the Golden Triangle and the surrounding neighborhood. So every 2 years, everybody gets basically a postcard with a QR code to go in and fill it out. Unfortunately, not everybody, if you're in an apartment, it's sort of ensuring that the mail delivery person is putting them in the boxes and that you're getting them. But yeah, that like kind of thousands of mailers go out every 2 years to every address. We work kind of through the US Postal Service's address list.
Yeah, sorry, Megan, that you haven't gotten that. We definitely we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
We will.
We also will when we do them, they're also posted on the website, on like our social media as well. So if you're not following us already, definitely make sure you are for when those announcements go out.
And we can push that latest survey out. I see here the DNA is also saying that they're going to be doing some surveying as well. We can push out the results of the last survey, which was from 2024. And So it's, you know, a little dated, but not up for a refresh until next year.
Great. All right. A few comments in here that I see. Jonna, I see you've had your hand up here since about, yep.
I do, Aaron. Thank you. Hey, this question is for Catherine. Catherine, I really appreciated the data that you shared, but in opening your presentation, you said that there were some ideas that you had about Pittsburgh that you found were not to be true. And so I would just be curious if you could share that with us. You know, anecdotally, what were the things you thought about the city that were not true? And how do we do a better job of
Yeah.
sharing our story and changing people's minds about Pittsburgh, not just locally, really. You know, I have folks, I live 30 miles south of the city, and I have neighbors who say, oh, I won't go to downtown Pittsburgh. There's crime, right? Or something like that. So how do we change? What were your misconceptions, and how do we change those, not just locally, but nationally as well, if you don't mind sharing that?
As long as I don't get yelled at by my clients.
Right.
We'll mute you quickly.
Um, and hey, I'm going to put it in perspective. I lived in Miami for 10 years, and then I lived in DC for 25 years. My perception of Pittsburgh, having only been there once or twice when I was younger, it was that it was a little bit more blue collar and a little bit more what I will call good old boy network, sports network. And once we started looking at the data and I started realizing, we started investigating the city, that really isn't true. That's a piece of it, but that is not the entire story. And I think the best way to deal with that is, and when we're in Vegas, and we, by the way, we refer to ICSE as Vegas. Everybody knows what we're talking about. We're not out there to play. I have Kate set up with a couple of national writers, so she can talk to these writers who are writing stories about markets around the country and to really give them the kind of information they need. We used this in Washington, D.C. when it was perceived 20 years ago as the city was coming out of bankruptcy as just a federal town. They had no idea who lived there and what lived there. We spent a lot of time talking to writers, showing writers the real D.C., the D.C. on the ground floor. And I think that's what Pittsburgh has to do. They have to kind of dispel some of that. I mean, and now you have this really cool TV show, The Pit, you know, and that's actually getting great coverage. It's getting great feedback. But it's easy enough sometimes to have those kind of myths out there. Baltimore is still fighting, whatever the something show on the street. And they're still dispelling those negative perceptions. So part of it is getting those positive stories, showing people the real Pittsburgh, showing people, you know, how many students are here, what kind of industry you have here, the level of education that you have here, but most importantly, what it's like on the ground. You have some of the best cultural institutions I've seen in a long time. So that's partly how you do it. It changed my mind completely.
Well, I appreciate your answer, because I think that, you know, perception is reality for folks,
Absolutely.
right? And so, and we just have such a great story to tell in Pittsburgh. So I'm glad we've changed your mind.
Right.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yep. Thanks, Jonna. Another question from Camille down here of whether there are funds from the 2026 draft that might be used to grow and sustain local long-term businesses.
Yeah, so I can take that one. There are currently no funds kind of committed to any sort of retail work yet. We are looking at existing programs. You know, are they working? Are these things that we should be looking for additional investment? That would be our pop-up program, you know, from a public art perspective, and our rent abatement program, which I think is the one that we're leaning into most right now. But we are open to ideas. We are certainly looking at ways that we can promote and grow the downtown businesses that are currently here, making sure that draft goers are aware of the retail, shopping, restaurant opportunities that exist in downtown Pittsburgh now. But we're really looking at this, you know, you can only sell so much over that 3-day stint. What are things that we can do that are going to not just help for that weekend, but are going to help sustain? And Camille, I know that you are a landlord of a couple of businesses now, and we would welcome kind of insights from you. And I know there's a couple of other retailers on this call, as to ways in which we can and should be supporting existing retailers, because it's much easier to keep the ones you have, hopefully, than to bring new. So making sure that we're doing everything we can as an organization and that we're partnering with folks. And I think that's something the DNA is going to be leaning into as well, really working to market existing businesses and kind of tell the story of the entrepreneurs that are investing here in downtown.
Right. We have another question from Lawrence about curious to learn how the downtown Target store compares to other stores of similar size CBD markets around the country. Does this data exist?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one. The data does exist. The problem is getting it. And we actually we have a meeting with Target when we're in Las Vegas, just kind of a meet and greet for Kate to meet the real estate team. Usually you get that information through casual conversations with them. One of the things that in a downtown environment, when you take out cities like New York, but if you look at Philadelphia, you look at Washington, you have a more traditionally sized Target. Some of the other cities have gotten the smaller ones. They're called express stores, and they've all gone because they can't make the model work. People dispel they think, oh, there's nothing in the store, it's because of shrinkage. They literally can't figure out the distribution system. You have a more traditionally sized store, and you can do some of the research, and we can do that, and I can get that to Jeremy and Kate on what a traditional store does, and then when we meet with them in May, hopefully we'll get a better understanding of how they're doing.
Yeah, and we do speak with the management team at Target as regularly as we can, and they seem very pleased with the performance of the store. They lament the fact that they are somewhat landlocked and cannot grow. They're seeing a lot of their sales coming from the modest grocery section that they have, so the ability to kind of keep product in place is a challenge for them. From a storage perspective and from a retail floor perspective. But beyond that, I think they have been really pleased with the reception and the sales volume that's coming through those.
Great. Question here from Angela. I know we're at our time, so we'll have to wrap up here shortly, but Angela, does either Project Pop-Up or placemaking programs provide funding to landlords who may want to accommodate a pop-up but not able to do so? Let's see, Kate, do you want to?
I mean, so it kind of depends a little bit on the situation, but the way that the programs are sort of funded is in these cases they go towards the tenant. So with Project Pop-Up, it's a $15,000 grant to the tenant that is typically used for sort of very small kind of fit out costs and kind of things like purchasing of stock, signage, that sort of thing. But for most of those types of pop-ups, we're looking for turnkey spaces or relatively turnkey so that not a lot of investment needs to be made in the space in order to get it kind of through city permitting and up and running. So, but that is sort of tenant-based funding. And then the same with a lot of the placemaking pop-ups, those are really going towards the artists to create the pieces, which is why many of them are utilizing kind of windows or the window bays in those cases, as opposed to interior renovations and that type of work, at least through those types of programs. But if there is a specific site, we're always, willing to chat with the property owner and kind of see what might work for different sites to kind of try to provide opportunities to get them up and active.
Thank you, Kate.
I'm looking at there are definitely a number of comments and some comments about the Strip District. One question here that might be a good one to wrap up on is, I've had many visitors ask, is there a shopping street? I often send them to the Strip District. Is there a block or area downtown that you're looking to do this to, or is it more widespread? So I take this question as, is this investment and focus keying in on specific streets and corridors versus more widespread, more open to all, and more inclusive of everywhere downtown?
Yeah, I can take that. I think this is something that we've struggled with, to be perfectly honest. You know, we have identified some primary retail corridors, some primary high streets as Wood Street, Smithfield, Penn Avenue, Liberty, you know, this historic traditional streets that are kind of chock full of storefronts. But it kind of comes down to willing and able owners on some of these programs as well. Like, where do you have people who want to work with you, who understand kind of the value of maybe not getting top dollar, but getting a great tenant in there? We've certainly invested a lot in Market Square, which is obviously primarily restaurant, but there is some retail specifically on Market Street. I do think there's some additional opportunities on Wood Street, but we just don't have like these long blocks of traditional retail that create that kind of mix of mom and pop retail space. We do have that from restaurant. I think the 900 block of Penn is like a great dining destination. 6th Street, obviously just chock full of really great, primarily locally owned restaurants. We do see Smithfield Street as a key component, particularly with the redevelopment of the Kaufman's building and the leasing that's happened over there. Like, how do we build, Catherine mentioned this earlier, on the success of Burlington and Five Below and Target. And there are some larger footprint spaces in there, particularly in the Heinz 57 Center down at 6th Avenue, and then some, the former CVS at the corner of Forbes and Smithfield. And then you could even go pull a little bit further down into Oxford Center. So I would say those are kind of emerging. We also, and this was kind of a pre-COVID discussion, was really looking at First Avenue as a place for retail, just given how great of a scale that street is and kind of a nice mix of 20 to 40 foot building frontages that really work well for smaller format retail. But yeah, I think it's something that we struggle with, because we do have, when you look, a lot of retail, but they're disparate, right? You have to want to have your walking shoes on. There's no place where you can go like, oh, go to XYZ Street. You can't go to Butler Street in downtown and find all that you're looking for. And certainly I think the Strip District's done a really great job building off of course, the historic Penn Avenue and all the shopping that's gone on there. But then with the terminal building and just, you know, really rock solid mix of mostly nationals, but some good retail destinations there.
Yep.
All right, I think with that, we're going to pull the plug. Clearly, we can talk retail all day. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Please feel free to reach out. We would love to hear from you all. We love this kind of conversation. We're happy to join one of our many new coffee shops, to meet you at one of them and talk about this. Anything else, Kate, Aaron, before we let these folks go?
No, thank you so much, Catherine, for joining us and
Yes.
providing your insights.
Yeah, very much so. All right. Enjoy your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.